got to catch up. Oh my gosh, we're adding 5G to this site. We don't know what's there. Everyone's hair is on fire. Construction starts in 3 weeks. As opposed to, well, if you just would have.
On this episode of the RCN Podcast, the founder and CEO of VTS, John Chwalibog.
There's no real reason for one carrier to know what equipment's on the tower from another carrier. But it's important to know. My first mobile system that I sold was $1.2 million.
Capture is becoming easier and faster and cheaper.
How long is it going to take for us to change our workflow to make this thing mainstream? And so starting with really good data allows us to now.
All right, welcome to the Reality Capture Network podcast. Today, excited to have John with VTS in studio here. Thanks for coming out to the studio, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. It's awesome to be here. Been following you for a while, and just excited to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks again for coming out. I always love in person. I think over the last couple of years, we've all got used to virtual, but it's always fun to actually sit in person. And one big benefit is, we get to spend time digging in before and spending time after and really building relationship and digging in even more than what the guests might get to hear on the podcast. So I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's, we're built for relationships, and it's hard to do that virtually. And I guess selfishly, coming out to Boise, I get to maybe scout a little bit for some fly fishing in the fall. Coming back for RCN in October, so maybe some pre-planning for a longer trip.
Good.
In October.
Well, I'm glad to hear. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dig in today. I know we're going to talk about your journey and story. We're going to talk about technologies. We're going to talk about where things are at today in the industry and what you guys are doing. But I really find value in digging into the person's story first.
Okay.
Because, in fact, one of the things that I think that's interesting about doing that is today, I think a lot of our industry has labor shortage, right? And so I like hearing the story of each person that is in our industry in a role of like, how did they get into the industry or what drove their initial steps? I think it just helps us kind of unpack some of that journey and hear the background of them. And then maybe it gives more perspective to what you're doing now and where you came from. So take us back however far you want in like what you grew up around and when you first, were getting out of school and into your, entry career. What did that journey look like?
Yeah, so very non-traditional. From a personal perspective, known my wife for a long time, but we started a family very early, and it's not that this is an unknown fact or hidden, but I never finished school, and so was very fortunate in my career to be surrounded by people who saw the value of hard work and willingness to kind of try to solve hard problems and tackle the things that other people didn't. I started with Carl Zeiss, their surveying equipment division. Carl Zeiss got bought by Spectra. Spectra got bought by Trimble. And that's really where my career started in what I'll say reality capture. Incredible organization, a lot of really good people that, like I said, valued those things more than a piece of paper and the degree. There's a ton of value in the degree. Not discounting that at all. But it wasn't my path, just because of circumstances. So spent a number of years at Trimble, again, on the reality capture side, product management roles, some strategic account roles. That led to an awesome opportunity with Faro. Faro had just gotten into the 3D scanning game with their acquisition, and so I came on board and was able to help them and be surrounded by some amazing people, some people that you've had on here, that I've worked with because of Faro. And then after Faro, really cool opportunity with Matterport, completely different, kind of tech startup, traditional Silicon Valley, new technology, trying to expand kind of reality capture in a different way to different markets. And, from that and through that experience, it really led me to starting VTS. Interestingly enough, today is our 6-year birthday anniversary.
Congrats. I'm glad I get to spend it with you. We're going to go out for, meal and drinks or something.
There you go. Perfect. But it was really this idea of trying to create all of that experience, and all of it was positive, but there were aspects to it that, for me were maybe different, or I didn't enjoy as much. And so, we set out to try to create a company where we could create opportunities for other people. This idea of reality capture and digital twins, I'm of the mindset like the pie's got to get so much bigger. So how do we make it bigger? And through doing that, can we create opportunities for people? New career path, set up small businesses, capture more things with more technologies and more creative ways, and just be a part of that whole, ecosystem of creating opportunities, which in this kind of, I view it as a new industry.
Yeah.
This is, surveying or mapping or documenting things has always been around, but this idea of you doing it digitally and in 3D and some of the things with the newer technologies is newer.
Yeah. What, when you look back at some of your previous roles before starting your company, what type of industries were you most focused on or looking at?
In a broader sense with Trimble was geospatial, right? So, some of the things that you traditionally think about, some of the technologies being applied. Trimble early days, we're trying to figure out some things with scanning. Leica obviously made some big moves early on and kind of led the charge, and we were trying to figure out some of that stuff to respond to that. But there were other amazing technologies that Trimble has too, kind of in the positioning, measurement world. From a Faro perspective, it was really focused on the built world, architecture, engineering, and construction. That was the big focus for 3D laser scanning. There's subsets of that. There's industries that adopted earlier. Oil and gas was one of the first to really lean into the hardware and software and use of the data, but that quickly expanded to others. But it was pretty traditional from that kind of AEC built world.
Yeah.
Was most of the focus until I got to Matterport. Matterport coming at it from the real estate space and this idea of virtual tours. My role there was to try to help them figure out new opportunities, help get them into the AEC game or some of these other use cases, and find where the technology that they had fit in kind of those workflows. So it kind of opened the door to this idea that there's this whole other world out there. There's all of these different industries that could really benefit from the idea of a digital twin or having some imagery or a representation of the real world.
Yeah. And really over those different roles and those amount of years, you've got to see a lot of change in hardware and what is needed to capture different, spaces, and up to then your current company. So you started, and tell us a little bit about your goal with the company initially, and then kind of some of the journey of what it's transformed into over the last 6 years.
Yeah. So completely transparent. My wife and I started it as this kind of part-time side thing. Maybe we could, retire, kind of stay active, involved. Didn't really know. But it wasn't really meant to be kind of what it's evolved into. Quickly, though, it became this opportunity. We started to focus on capture services, and kind of the mindset was, we'll do it for you, we'll teach you how to do it, and then support you in you doing it in different industries. And so it was kind of plowing into either new industries. For a bit, we were doing a bunch of stuff in insurance and some other areas, or helping customers that were in industries that had accepted it but were early days in 3D laser scanning. So, that's kind of how we got started. We, live in capture problems, dealing with customers, access to sites, all of those things. And that brought us to where we are today with some of the tools that we've developed with the app and the portal. So we kind of have two companies inside of one. One is we provide capture services. We're really focused on telecom and critical infrastructure. We kind of got pulled in that direction as kind of a niche and some expertise and some experience, and then building some tools just based on everything that we go through as 3D capture professionals just to get a job done.
So the shift into telecom, was that driven just by opportunities you guys ran into, or you noticed a specific need, or how did the focus down into that niche happen?
I describe it as we got pulled into it.
Pulled in.
Yeah. I mean, we were aware of, drone captures were becoming really popular in telecom, and, kind of knew about all of that. We weren't really doing a whole lot, and had another professional colleague friend come to us and say, hey, we've got a challenge with sites that we can't fly drones on, rooftop locations specifically. You think about the telecom infrastructure, everyone, immediately, envisions a cell tower. In urban environments, all of that infrastructure is on top of buildings. And a lot of those urban environments have flight restrictions, no-fly zones, those kind of things. And so we got asked, is there some technologies where we could produce a 3D point cloud of these kind of rooftop locations? And so we got pulled in that direction, started to use Matterport and some BLKs and point cloud technologies, investigated different SLAM-based technologies. And so, just really got sucked into it from trying to solve that problem for a couple of users, and it stuck. Yeah. The opportunity is a good one. It's a continually changing environment. And so that's really interesting. It presents some challenges. The technology's newer in the space. And so the idea of a digital twin and creating or getting a 3D representation of the built world is newer. So that opportunity is really interesting. And it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just continuing to grow and expand. And so we're like, okay, this seems like maybe an area that we can be successful in and focus on, and build some new tools for, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. What's one of the reasons behind in telecom for capturing sites? Is it and I'm just guessing, do they have to do like certain inspections of their towers, or what drives the requirement to go capture for them, on a frequent basis? Yeah,
and this is a really broad general statement, and so it's not indicative of everyone.
Yeah.
But in general, the telecom industry doesn't know what it has. And that's for a lot of different reasons. It could be that there's multiple carriers on a tower, and so there's no real reason for, say, one carrier to know what equipment's on the tower from another carrier. But it's important to know how much equipment's on that tower, how much load can it take, if we're going to replace equipment, swap it out for new technology. But in general, there's not this sense of anyone in the space really fully understanding what these sites
exactly what they have like, and where it is.
So it's not a different problem from other industries. I think that's a big one that drove a lot of the adoption of 3D reality capture technologies. It's to have that comprehensive understanding of what is in a space to start with. And then different, stakeholders have different, kind of drivers for that. The tower owners, the building owners where these assets get located, it's a revenue question.
Yeah.
How much more revenue? How many more leases can we put out there? How much more revenue can we generate off of the asset? For the carriers and some of those, it's what equipment's there. We're going from 4G to 5G or 5G to next gen. what equipment can we leverage, what needs to be replaced, how much equipment do I need, those kind of questions, from that perspective. And then there's just the regular ongoing operations and maintenance. Things change, kind of coming from AEC, it's no different. There's a design and then there's what gets built, and they're never exactly the same for a lot of really valid reasons. And so understanding what you actually have to kind of move forward from is the primary driver.
Yeah, it's a big one. I think across all industries is just a lack of knowledge of assets and what people have and where it's located. And, we've even seen that inside just major buildings, right? It's like the maintenance guy didn't even know where the mechanical room was in this 300,000 or 3 million or whatever square footage. So just for documentation of what is where and information for people to use for even finding their own assets.
Yeah, and change management. Things change. Yeah. Like things break, need to be replaced, doesn't get documented, or someone forgets to, or they did and it's in the wrong spot. It's just these things continually change. And so it's trying to understand, at a particular moment, what's the state of the asset. And so, from the technology side, the app and portal, that's really what the driver was. Like, can we capture more things in 3D more often? Not necessarily bigger things, right? Capturing something with your iPhone, there's a role for it. There's space and applications where it's absolutely the wrong technology. And so it was really, though, that idea, more things more often as part of a bigger solution of understanding things in 3D.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. So you started by doing the services and trying to just go capture sites, but then you realized kind of an opportunity, and so you developed your own platform.
Yep. And
with an actual focus on capturing with an iPhone.
Yeah, that's right.
So explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of two problems there. One is capture management and just trying to set Scantex up for success in the field, getting access to locations.
Because this is a high volume,
yeah, and time sensitive. Typically construction, for these fit outs that are happening from one generation to another, small window to get those done. So very, very time sensitive. So getting access to the site, local contact, if we can't, access codes don't work, don't have the right keys, whatever it is, like who do you talk to? How do because when I show up, I want to capture it and be off the site. One and done. We don't want to have to go back. Those delays, just like in any industry, are problematic. And so there was a piece of this kind of capture management function, and how do we set up a Scantech for success in the field? Give them all the information they need about the site to be able to know where they're going, know how many sites I'm going to do today, how to go from site to site, basic stuff, to some of that, kind of more complicated. Here's the spec for this location because ultimately it's, for this carrier or this client who has a certain way of ingesting the data. So photogrammetry data as well as 3D data. Everyone kind of has their own kind of playbook they want you to follow. So those unique kind of aspects to it, depending on who the client was. And then, just making it easier to capture and more cost effective, from a technology perspective. So, some of the technologies we were using prior to the phone, they're expensive and it's hard to scale with equipment that's $25,000. We have limited time on site. So there was some drivers that drove it. And again, we had to make sure that the results, the 3D data we're getting out the back end, fit the needs of the client, right? It's good enough. And so there was kind of all of those factors that led to building the app for the capture with the phone, and then the corresponding capture management portal to help manage the operations.
And I think what you guys have done is it's really that idea of of refining a process and what technology is used to get to that need in the most efficient and cost-effective way possible that makes the capture possible. You know, as technologies change, something cheaper and faster comes out, you know, we as an industry need to work together to evaluate what can we do with this and what can we not do with this. And when we actually narrow in and say, here's actually a good use case for this tool, it creates a whole nother internal industry within our industry of saying, hey, iPhones for, you know, rooftop or cell tower or whatever captures, like, here's a process that's been proven out. Here's an app to do it. Here's a way to manage it. And now that creates an opportunity for that industry, the telecom industry, to now be innovative, adopting a tool that's been created specifically to solve their problem.
Yeah, that's right. And it creates more opportunities for others as well. You know, an iPhone capturing an asset in the telecom, so it's not going to get everything, right? It's great for rooftops and those, but, you know, towers. So, you know, we kind of have this mindset for capture services for telecom. It's phone and a drone. If we can, you know, almost everything between the drone capture of the tower itself and the ground compound with the kind of the overlap between the phone and the drone itself, we can get a lot of the data that's required to drive decision making. That's not the end all be all. There's times when terrestrial laser scanning is required because structural analysis, more structural analysis or detailed structural analysis needs to be done. And so you need that, you know, different technology that's going to give you that better accuracy and dependability on the data. And so the portal is also set up to kind of, you know, support or ingest those data sets as well, and just, you know, have it all located in one spot. I can view it, I can access it, I see my pictures, see my drone imagery, I can get the data that's processed by the app, but I can also add, you know, say data from a Faro scanner that was also collected on that site, and now the client has all of the information they need kind of in one spot. They can take the Faro data, drive structural analysis or design work with it, share the visuals, the images with the construction team, you know, so they have context, whatever it is. It's trying to support, you know, all of the decision making that can happen or work that gets done based off of multiple data sets that get captured.
That's awesome. What about some of the conversations, like when you're trying to continue to scale and push this in with people who aren't using it yet? Talk a little bit about your experience around some of the hesitations of companies like adopting something new, and that, you know, just challenge with getting people to overcome wanting to change and innovation. Like, what have you kind of seen there in some of your industry and discussions?
Yeah, I think this has actually been true for a while. Just looking back on my career and different technologies, you know, and kind of different spaces with the different companies I worked for, it's process disruption. Most people see it and go, yeah, I need it. It's really cool. How is it going to disrupt our existing workflow? And do I have the time to be able to deal with whatever that change is going to mean? You know, early days of scanning, my first mobile system that I sold in the US was, you know, $1.2 million. It wasn't so much about the cost. They had the money to spend. They justified the ROI from a return on investment. It was really, how long is it going to take for us to change our workflow to make this thing kind of mainstream or part of what we do? And that's been true. It's, how is this going to change how I actually work? You know, there's a lot of comfort in the idea of walking a site with a wheel or a tape measure. Like, I know it. I've done it this way 1,000 times. I know the results. I know what I have to do with that kind of, like, I've got a comfort level with this. And so you want me to change? You want me to now, like, use my phone to do this? And what am I going to do with this 3D file? That's something I'm not comfortable with, how long is it going to take me to, kind of deal with that change piece of it? That's the biggest thing to overcome. And so, we've tried to focus on simplifying the capture workflow. Our mindset is anyone that has access to these sites should be able to capture them. It shouldn't require a trained professional for all things, right? There are absolutely times when the right expert, someone like yourself, needs to come in, capture it in a very particular way to meet a particular need. But for a lot of the use cases, the idea of sharing the visualization, walking from a visual inspection, those kind of things, anyone should be able to capture it and share that data and information. And so it's creating a user experience that really is low barrier to entry, easy to use. Same thing on the back end. You need to make it really easy for someone to just click on something, see it, and kind of walk through it, and I guess not overcomplicate it. To make that barrier, that process change barrier lower.
I think that's still the biggest challenge in the industry in whole is one, even the capturing has become easier. Like, even if we didn't talk about the iPhone yet, let's go back to even terrestrial scanning. Years ago, you had to have all this control and there was no cloud to cloud and it took 15 minutes and it was super expensive. Even those devices are down now to where it's like you can have a 40-second scan. It's going super fast. It's tying itself together mostly in the field, and like the processes are becoming simplified or easier to learn or easier to get over hurdles. But the biggest issue is still, it looks beautiful, but now how do I use the data? In every application, because if an architect wants to use it, most architecture firms are still on, smaller computers that are meant for design. They've not really dealt with the point clouds themselves. It's challenging to take a 50 gig file, and like all of these barriers of how to use the data, how to make it simple, how to make it accessible, I think in every area is still the biggest challenge. And the more simplified we can make a workflow, especially for like what you're doing, the idea of a type of site that could be done by a phone, making it simple enough that it's a easy process to convert to, instead of going out with a camera and a notepad and you instruct someone on how to do it with a phone. You do it a couple times, it's easier, it's faster, you're getting better data out of it. Simplifying that user experience, I think is key. Well,
I think it leads to better decision making, and it's not replacing that. It, through that process, if, think about a maintenance person, and it doesn't have to just be telecom, but if they make a change to something and they document that in 3D and then that gets shared, right? A decision can be made off of that. We've got an updated view of what was changed, and someone can make the determination, okay, it's kind of not a big deal. Like, okay, great, we're aware of it, we'll just let it go. Or no, hey, wait a minute, that's a significant change. Let's, bring out the heavy gun, so to speak, rescan, redocument that area because there's some structural changes that were made or some significant mechanical changes, and the as-built needs to be updated, or the current view of what that is. And so I think it can lend itself to being aware of when and how things change in these environments and lend itself to better decisions, as opposed to, kind of what it seems like in telecom is it's like this, we got to catch up. Like, oh my gosh, we're adding 5G to this site. We don't know what's there. Everyone's hair is on fire. Construction starts in 3 weeks. Like, as opposed to, well, if you just would have documented as you went along, you kind of know the situation you're in, and that process can flow. And so I think it's a shift, and it's coming. But it's definitely, we love the idea of like, this is another tool in the toolbox, and how do we leverage that tool in the best way possible?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the pieces that we are trying to hopefully fill, along with collaboration with other people in the industry, that that specialize in certain areas with certain types of drones, with iPhone LiDAR, with terrestrial scanners, with mobile scanners, with survey, is we need more education around what tool fits where and when and how to use it, because we're still at the point today that there are people who have not used any of the technology yet.
Yep.
And there are clients who have not had any of the technology requested yet. So a lot of people don't know, how do you even start? Like, what is the iPhone good enough for? When do I have to go to a scanner? And then when I go to a scanner, when could I use a SLAM scanner or a terrestrial scanner?
Yeah. Well, that's what we love about what you guys are doing, right? Trying to play that role to educate and create awareness. And it's not just about the user community, right? Because I think we all kind of know and are aware of this. It's also, the owners of these assets, the people that have to deal with these things, the operations and maintenance people, engineering, people that have to deal with real problems that are a result of having bad data. And so, it's that, and it's something that's been needed, for a while to help promote that idea of more 3D. It just, and you think about what that starts to enable, right? Understanding things in 3D. I don't know that everyone in the telecom space is really interested in a really cool 3D point cloud of the tower. I think they want to know information about that. And so starting with really good data allows us to now just feed you the information that you want to know. Like, tell me the size of that thing. I want to know how thick that is, or what's the length of it, or how many of this thing do I have on site? Those are the kind of questions that are really meaningful, but you got to have really good data as that starting point to then enable some of that stuff. And that's where I get excited about where the industry's going. And this whole idea of, if we just know the built world better in 3D, all of this really cool stuff can really start to happen.
Yeah, I feel like that's really where we're at in the industry in whole right now, is that capture is becoming easier and faster and cheaper, and also the awareness around it is growing. And so we're seeing more industries want to capture more, and it's creating all this data that, if we all get on the same page now of how to capture properly and what tools to use where, and how we, control or geospatially locate data for large enterprises, and they know where their assets are, now we start to have so much data that we go to the next step of all the different applications that can be done with that data. We see the rise and the discussion around AI and ML and, smart buildings, and, being able to take data and locate all these assets automatically, or classifications, or, how many devices are on these towers and where are they all located, and for software and developers to now create a process that can take all that data that's been captured and start to find information out of it.
Yeah, and it's about the built world. This is there's the metaverse.
Yep.
I get frustrated sometimes with some of that stuff, and this is so important. It's the infrastructure, the buildings, the things that we need to operate as a society. They're critical. And so to have a better understanding of the built world, and then those really cool things can happen based on, the built environment, I think is really cool. The metaverse, or the virtual world, that's great. You want to live in that. But reality is, for that to happen, we got to, live and breathe and operate in this world.
Yeah. And, that's where I'm trying to play this middleman of I follow all that stuff. I love the idea of what metaverse could mean to the real world. And yet you see a lot of companies that when they talk about metaverse, it really is just, hey, put on VR and meet a friend and, play chess or something.
Yeah.
To me, we come from this industry, right, where we are actually building the world. We're building and digitizing assets. We're helping oil and gas companies with their facilities. We're helping build roads. We're fixing bridges. We're doing investigation on structural. We work in the real world, building and digitizing it. We started creating what might be some type of digital metaverse and digital twins back before anybody knew what that meant. It was just maybe used different words. But I see this future where some of the two of those ideas are mixed, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think 10 years from now, almost every asset is going to have a digital twin of some sort. I think
that'd be awesome.
I think every airport, every high rise, every home, I think at some point everything has a level of a digital twin, whatever level of detail that looks like. But what happens when you now have all this geospatial data? What else could be done with it? Those futuristic ideas of like, hey, the AR, glasses we're wearing are now, everybody has them because they're lightweight. Now what could be done with overlaying virtual, simulations or digital advertisement or wayfinding or, looking at what furniture looks like in your house before you buy it, or all of those things. I think all of those ideas of what we think about the future could look like can happen. And this is what I keep saying about, innovation and all these futuristic ideas is they don't happen unless people take action to actually do it. And we as a community, I think we have a lot of the tools and a lot of the right minds to collaborate together to make some of those future things possible.
The question for me is like, do you want to, so your chess example, right? You meet in the metaverse to play chess. Well, why not meet in the metaverse and collaborate over, this pump room or this mechanical space? And do you want to meet over what the design was, or do you want to meet over what actually got built? Like what is actually in there today, now, right? And how do you make that happen? How do you, as close to real time as possible, make decisions? We can meet in that space virtually. So that idea of merging these two things, but because we've enabled capture to happen so frequently and easily, that I'm always looking at the latest version of it. And it's what's actually there. And decisions can be made off of that. I think that's what gets exciting. And that's where that kind of meshing of those two things happen.
Totally. And I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm just picturing it like the speed at which, again, maybe someone can't do with a $150,000 scanner because it's off in some other office, but everyone has an iPhone, right? So at some point, the guy in that pump room on a call with someone back at the office could scan the room with the phone and immediately send it to him. And now the person in the office will open it up and look at it while the guy in the field has the AR glasses and you could drop a model in, see it real time. That type of collaboration when it comes to any built environment, the collaboration between design, construction, maintenance, being able to visually see what's at the real site in collaboration with someone virtual in another area, I think is going to be huge.
Yeah, and what makes all that happen is capturing these spaces. Like I've always viewed us, when I was at Faro, we're like this enabler. We're not like the really cool thing, the sexy thing. Like it's what people do with the data, like the modeling that people would do, and the virtual representations that they would create off the point cloud. That's what everyone oohed and awed.
Yeah,
we're like just this, blue collar kind of technology, but you need that for all the really cool stuff to happen. And that's what I think is exciting, is starting to happen. More and more people are realizing, well, I can't just take a picture of a space and get the context that I need and all of the information to drive those decisions. I need really good data behind that image to do that. And so that gets exciting. And that's where, I think it is early days for reality capture. There's a lot of things that need to be captured in 3D. Yep. And so it's a bright future.
Yeah, I look at, I think a lot of us that have been in the industry for a long time, we maybe start to think that scanning is becoming so common, right? And we hear that a lot of people are doing it, but so many people that I've seen, that are doing scanning or they're a service provider, they're kind of in their own little world. Like they're focused in their area or their region, or they're focused in their industry.
Yeah.
The thing that I've realized over the years, being that I've been pulled into so many industries, from nuclear to oil and gas to airports to hospitals I start to see the massive amount of need across every industry. Then I start to look at, again, we talk with global companies that have thousands of facilities, thousands of buildings, thousands of warehouses. Like the amount of assets out there that will be needed, it will need to be documented at some point. And many of these large organizations are starting to realize they're seeing this data, they're seeing the technology, they are coming up with the use cases now of saying, hey, we actually want to digitize our assets because we think it'll help us with planning, it'll help us with safety, it's going to help us with training and simulations. Okay, can you tell me someone today that could capture 4,000 sites this year?
It depends on what the 4,000 sites are, but
let's say, it's so much. Now that's one business.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds of those. I look at the opportunities out there that as we continue educating, we continue building these use cases and proving them out. If we get those types of companies to say, we're on board, we want to do it, there's not enough qualified providers to actually accomplish the amount of work that could be done next year.
Oh no, you're 100. I mean, you said 4,000 sites. We did 4,000 last year in telecom, but these are like snippets, right?
Yeah.
We're not capturing an entire building or a complex, or and it's just a small sample size of what the opportunity is.
Yeah.
This whole idea of telecom and critical infrastructure. There's just so much need for it to be updated and understood better, and it's massive. It's massive, and so that's that idea when we started VTS. Well, can we be part of something that creates opportunities for people? Can we create a network of people that we're enabling them to do capture? Setting someone up in a small business as a subcontractor. They don't have to be a VTS employee. We don't have to be the one to do the capture work, enabling more because of exactly what you said. Like it is massive. It is absolutely massive to try to understand the built world, and there's a lot to go and do.
Yeah, and even when we look at a lot of the applications of scanning today, like just a construction project for instance, whatever the building or whatever it is, they're gonna do a renovation on a building. So what happens? They want to scan in the beginning. They get an as-built, and historically, that's been it.
Yep.
You scan it, they get an as-built, and they move forward with design from there, and the data gets thrown away. Now we're starting to see, okay, can we come back in the middle of construction and scan again and compare the progress against the design and make sure that things are being built properly? Can we do that on a weekly basis? Can we do that at the end and have a true final as built? So now I also look at not only the amount of assets that could be documented or will need to be documented and the lack of availability of companies to be able to do the volume that's out there. Then I look at if each of those projects now starts to adopt that mindset of progress scans and QC and final as-built. Now, not only do we have to capture the 4,000 sites, now we have to capture the 4,000 sites 5 times.
Multiple times, yeah.
And, the other challenge I've seen historically is that, nobody knows who to work with. Nobody knows who to have help scan. Nobody knows, who knows what experience levels, anything like that. And those ideas of mass volumes of projects and consistency on the same site is also what's going to really drive opportunity for people to be scanning all over the place. We need companies in every city, every state, every region, because we've been flown across the country from California to New York to scan a staircase. And I'm like, okay, long term, we need to start having a network of people to be able to collaborate with in order for that to be scalable.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question and problem. And, I don't know how you solve that per se. That's, there's really no educational programs. It's not like you can go get a degree in 3D reality capture. That's not happening yet. Maybe it's an aspect of engineering programs or, survey programs that are still out there. But there's not a core focus on this and having that comprehensive understanding. So I think that's an opportunity. And, again, it'd be interesting to see what role, something like RCN can play in driving that educational piece and what does it mean to kind of be certified and an expert, and how do you get to that? But yeah, that's definitely something that I think the industry needs, and more structure around it. So there is that assurance, right? Yeah. Someone who's new to the technology, a new company, a new industry, can have some kind of assurance that, it's a credible entity that's coming in. They've got their interests in mind, and they're going to apply the right technology in the right way to get the result.
Yeah. Well, I think we can start solving some of those basic problems just by conversations, just by educational content of sharing stories about things that worked or things that didn't work, or how we're using certain tools, or doing case studies on projects that said, here's a tool, here's how we used it, this was the outcome. That's part of why we're doing like webinars, and we're recording presentations from our conference of case studies, is that just by having a library with that type of information, somebody who doesn't know where to start can watch and listen and now come out with a little bit more of a starting point or an informed decision on, hey, this is how they are using this gear and it's working. Where without that type of resource, someone new or a company new into this technology, they're just Googling and you get all kinds of random stuff, and we need better resources in order for, I think, the industry to scale. Yeah,
and we as being in it, we also need to figure out how to manage customers and those expectations. We've learned a lot of what we're not good at, and doing the things that we're really good at because of how we manage new users or new customers or industries, that are kind of getting into this 3D space and they have one view of it. And so, we've got to make sure we do a good job of managing expectation and educating as we go, and not just doing and expecting, the client or the user of the data to know what to do, because a lot of times they don't. They have an idea, or they go in with one expectation with minimal understanding of the technology or what's capable, and so there's still that piece of it too that has to happen.
And I think that's that's innovation, right? We are in this industry that all this technology is new. It's developing, it's changing, it's improving. There's different software. There is no playbook.
Yeah.
There is no playbook on here's exactly what you should use, here's the exact workflow, here's the exact outcome. Like, most of us in this industry right now have had to learn on our own, learn the hard way. We're testing a scanner for a day and we're like, okay, I think that's the right one. We buy it, we go out to a job, we try to scan. We've all had to learn how do we target things? How do we not target things? Which scanner works best in this type of environment? Like, again, till now, it's been very, very, very minimal on what type of training you could get or the content out there to help you. It's all that early innovation stage, which innovation is, taking something new, improving a process, pushing it to failure maybe, and revising our process and knowing where things work and where things don't. And
there's a guy I follow on LinkedIn, his name's Jacob Brown, and he has this idea of failing forward. And that, innovation, everything that we go through, like, that's the best place we learn is through failure, right? Trial and error. And hopefully you don't fail too big, and it hurts too much. They're small failures, and you can kind of learn as you go. I relate it to being a father. It's the same idea. You want your kids to experience life and make some mistakes. You just don't want them to make big ones. And so that's, I think, as a industry and someone that's kind of tried to adopt some of these new technologies, there's been a lot of small failures along the way, and a lot of learned lessons. And we'll just keep moving forward because of those.
Yeah. And, I think the best thing that, especially bigger companies can do when they start wanting to innovate and they want to adopt technologies or processes is creating a innovation process, creating a process that says, we're gonna try this, we're gonna pilot it, we're gonna not use it on a real job yet, but go do it on a pilot project and see, just like push it as far as you can until it fails. Because then you know what it's good at, what it's not good at, and then you know if you're going to go take it into your real processes where it fits properly. I think that's one of the biggest struggles in the adoption of all reality capture today, scanners, drones, whatever, is that often companies make a decision really quick to buy a piece of hardware and put it straight on the project, and there's not been enough training, there's not been enough testing, and that's where we see the failure on the job, which it then creates that process or that struggle of like a construction company buys a scanner, puts it on the project, doesn't know what they're really doing yet, and now they have this bad data, they have issues, and now their whole company has a distrust in the technology, where really it was a lack of training or testing or workflow, not the tool itself. I think that's an area that a lot of companies are struggling with, is not wanting to take the time or the upfront cost, because that is there.
There's a cost to it. Yeah.
Everybody wants to move quick, and so we want to take the cheap route. We want to go fast. We want to buy it, get it internal. I think if we get the idea out there of slow down a little bit and refine process before implementing, we can bypass a lot of those headaches.
Yeah, that for sure. And trying to figure out how do we get people to take that time, dedicate the resources required to do those things. For us as a company, I almost view it as a luxury. We started as a services company. We needed to bootstrap. We needed to generate revenue, to grow, to add people. We didn't have a big financial backer, to get us off the ground. It was very, very grassroots. And so it was a necessity to kind of do the services work. And I look back on it now, and I actually think it was a huge blessing for us developing the technology. We were and are our first and best customer. We can afford to make mistakes. We've intentionally decided to, implement change and new things and kind of take it on the chin when it doesn't work, in the context of being a capture services business. And so hopefully there's enough of that learning that's taken place, because we are that boots on the ground. We live those problems, that when we do bring it, it's not as big of a process change. But you're right. Companies, customers, they need to find that time to say, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to figure it out before I put it into production. But I know this is going to cost me time and money to do this, but in the long run, it's going to be better for the adoption of the technology. Yeah.
And that's where, even with what we're doing, or, some of the ideas I have with RCN, it's like I'm continuing to just come up with new ideas and things that I want to do. And one of them really is helping the industry create those types of guidelines and educational content, getting other experts who have been in this for 5, 10, 12, whatever years, and coming together and saying, like, here's the challenges we've had, here's the outcomes we've had, and actually working together to create that type of material that we can help educate owners, we can help educate service providers, people that are getting into it now. We can the more that we together as a community can help identify problems, work together and say, oh, you have that problem? Well, I ran into that and here's my solution I found. And then the next company says, okay, but we tried this and this was even better. And we can all share that history of the challenges and the successes, and build together the educational content and the guidelines, and if we take it to certification even level, material to help both the providers and the owners adopt and avoid a lot of these headaches. Because I think as much as we love the tools, we love the technology, we love the data, I think because it's all still so new and there are challenges with it, I feel like there's more challenges than there is adoption today.
So let me just playing devil's advocate, maybe flipping the script a little bit here, and become the interviewer and you be the interviewee. Just having been on the manufacturing side of it for a long time, how do you get all the manufacturers on board with that idea and concept to have an industry specific set of workflows and not manufacturer specific, right? Because, you know, when I was at Faro, it was about adopting and getting Faro adopted, not in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had a job to do, was to sell more scanners. And so that idea of selling and getting more people to adopt my equipment at times can kind of swim upstream to what you're trying to do. Yeah. So how do you fix that? How do you solve that problem?
Yeah. You know, my current, and, you know, I've had this conversation with manufacturers directly, and other people asking, like, how are you going to do that? You know, why are you sharing your tips and tricks? And, you know, why are you sharing your secrets to success? And it's what we talked about earlier. It is, I believe that by educating properly, we can change the entire industry. We can push more adoption and more purchases of everybody's gear if we're educating on which tool to use and why to use it and the pros and cons of different systems. Now, there's always going to be a competition level between different manufacturers, right? There's Trimble scanners, there's Topcon scanners, there's Leica scanners, there's Faro scanners, there's Navis scanners, there's
make sure you mention them all.
They're all in there. I know. I'm like, who did I miss? I'm sorry. There's always going to be that interest in they want their product pushed and their product sold. And what I think is that some of the guidelines and workflows and things like that we want to create, they don't even have to specifically be technology specific, like manufacturer specific. I think some of the big missing pieces are like even just in a more general sense. So let's say, again, a tower or a telecom space, like at what point do you use the iPhone? Not whose app do you use and buy, not what platform are you going into, but what can the iPhone accomplish and what workflows do you use if you use the iPhone? Now, there's going to be a deep dive into, you know, your platform and the other 3 apps. Yeah. And then same with terrestrial. It's not, here's the Leica RTC process, here's the Faro Premium process, it's not getting that detailed. It's to say, because they are similar, right? Each platform, each manufacturer has their pros and cons and their gear and their price point and their speed and their platform, but they're all pretty similar in how they capture, how they control, how you do targeting, how you do setups, the outcome of the data. They're close enough that we can then define a guideline to say, if you're doing a 40,000 square foot office space, and you're looking for a 1/4 inch accuracy, which tool should you use? A terrestrial scanner or a mobile scanner? And do I need control or not? Should I use targets or not? You know, what density should I use if I'm looking to pick up this? So you can keep it broad enough that you're not calling out and saying, don't use that brand. And even when we get into brands, this is another reason, you know, we're starting to do kind of like deep dive webinars on different hardware and different software, because I still believe that there are certain, you know, benefits to certain manufacturers' product that maybe fits a certain industry type better or a certain company better. So I tell the manufacturers, I believe by actually digging that deep and sharing your secrets and sharing what you're best at and what you're not best at, you're going to have happier customers. They're going to be very informed when they buy your gear. They're not going to buy it because you were the first person they heard about. They know the pros and cons of all the platforms and they picked yours because of XYZ. Now you're going to have a loyal, dedicated, they love your platform because they know what they're really getting. I've seen the other way around where there wasn't enough educational content and someone bought the cheapest, right? Because that's what they were sold and it was the cheapest one. But then they tried to use it for a very high precision project. Well, and then you get back into what we talked about earlier. The data was bad. The client's unhappy. The service provider gets a bad name. All of it becomes negative, negative, negative. Don't trust the technology. And that is not going to help the industry grow.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. It's interesting because, and we talked a little bit before getting in here to do the podcast. But about 8 years ago, I was meeting with a big software company, and they described it as there needs to be 10 times the number of devices out there capturing in 3D to drive the innovation that they wanted to see from a software perspective. And so, and that was 8 years ago, and, virtual tours for real estate weren't out yet, and, understanding a virtual insurance claim and all these different, industries that now are trying to leverage a digital twin. Throw COVID into the mix.
Yeah.
Right? COVID was scary, but we had one of our best years because of COVID. Like the first 2 months of COVID, we didn't know if we were going to be around as a company anymore because no one knew what was going to happen. But everyone realized I can't go to these sites.
Yeah, I still need data.
5G's moving forward. Do you have someone in New York? If we can get access to a building, can they get on the rooftop and capture it? Because our engineering team needs to see it virtually. And so it was an extreme, instance of kind of forcing innovation and adoption. But I think as a result of that, people realize the value of, well, I can visit virtually. I don't need to spend the money to fly across the country to stand the staircase, because there's a way that I can get someone local to do it, and do that. So yeah, I think that more of the manufacturers need that mindset that the pie's got to get a lot bigger.
Yeah, and I'm getting really good. I'm getting really positive response from how we're trying to break those walls and silos down a bit in educating. And again, everybody still is like, hey, but we want this. We want to be special still. And however, I've also told all the manufacturers directly, like, one of the biggest benefits to what we're doing, to RCN, to us being the people driving the education, to us potentially being the person to develop the certification, to work with industry professionals, is that we have no bias. Like,
no skin in the game.
We have I don't care if you buy a Leica or a Scanner or a Trimble or a Faro or a whatever. I don't care. Yeah. I'm giving you very honest feedback on evaluating technology because I came from a user. Like, I own Leica and Navis and Faro. And I own most of them. And I know the pros and cons of different systems. And yes, that is also going to drive you manufacturers to compete with each other. Like, man, we want to be faster and we want to be better, or we want to be cheaper because we want people to choose us. That's on the manufacturers to develop their benefits,
It's almost like the manufacturers need to realize you need to be independent and really support that idea of RCN as an independent, because then you can be that voice of credibility.
Yep.
And that gives the assurance for the new user, the new industry, the new owner, to use that as a resource.
Yeah. And there's times that, I believe in this education piece so much and building the community. However, this was also started as an idea. We also have to figure out how to monetize it in order to hire and get developers and build out our site and build the education content and build the conference.
You mean you're not a nonprofit?
Yeah, no, we're not at the moment. We have to figure out how to fund that growth too. And so some people are like, well, if this person comes to you, you're going to sell out to them, we want sponsors. We want companies that see what we're doing to help boost us as well. And we totally are willing to take sponsors from products that we believe in. One thing you'll never see from us anywhere on anything we do, we will never have sponsors or, partnerships or anything with a product that we don't believe in or we don't think is a good fit. That's one thing we won't do. But products we do believe in, we have that trade-off as a business of, look, we want to give you more visibility because you're willing to fund and help us grow our overall community. Yeah. And so that's a balancing act, but our goal is 100% to stay unbiased and educate on all the options that we can, because it's a tool I wish I had. 5 years ago. I wish I could go to a website that showed me who are all the scanning devices and what are the different options for visualizing software. And
yeah, and I mean, just coming from that side of it and living on the manufacturer, I think it's too much to ask of a manufacturer to be neutral. Like, it's not,
you can't.
Working for Trimble, which is a publicly traded company, you have shareholder, like there's the realities of those things. And so, I'm as a Trimble salesperson, I was biased. Now I tried to be honest with clients, and, that's that idea of telling them what you can't do. And I think that serves you really well. There's times I wouldn't sell a solution, or we just didn't have a solution, and I'd be honest with them because there was something better that met those needs. And there's a lot of credibility that goes with that. But that independence in the space, I think is what's needed, and hopefully more will support you and go. I'm excited about it, from that perspective, just having been in the industry for 25 years now, and seeing it evolve, that maybe with some of these newer technologies and this innovation around reality capture, there's hope for that kind of independent voice that leads to an increase in adoption.
Yeah. The other reason I think that it leads to growth for everybody who's involved is that if we put a focus on educating, bringing in new audience that didn't even know you existed, right? If I have a spot that educates people on Leica and Navis and Faro and VTS and whatever other companies, they may be visiting the site because they saw a podcast conversation.
Yeah.
They may have not even been looking for your technology. Yet, if we're providing the resources to say, here's all these different tools, and somebody from an engineering company visited because they heard a conversation, but now we're showing them and bringing them into what is this industry? What are these technologies? And now if I have the deeper education material on here's how iPhones fit into, capture for telecom. Here's how terrestrial scanners fit into oil and gas facilities.
Yeah.
If I have all of that broken out by industry and we're bringing in massive new audience, we're bringing in enough new audience to sell more of everybody's product.
Yeah. And services, right? More people doing, right? It's not just about the products. It's also, a lot of this opportunity, and we're focused on trying to enable capture at scale. But the reality is there's a lot of people out there that says, well, can you do this for me? And so that creates opportunity too. So it's not just the manufacturers, it's also the services side. And, you think about that as a whole new trade industry. There's been a lot of focus and a lot of discussions around the trades and construction. And I think we think of the traditional ones. This is a new space. And I think about someone coming out of high school. I've got my youngest son, just graduated high school. Not sure what he wants to do. Loves, 3D, Minecraft, probably borderline addiction to Minecraft with him. But you think about a career path and where he could go and, get some real world experience. Yeah. Reality captures, a great space to learn new technology. It's
huge.
Yeah.
And
I don't know the kids know that there's an opportunity to do these things. Yeah. And, it's fairly easy to get your drone license. So there's not huge barriers, to be able to start to get in. And just like anything, you want to understand where you're going and everything. But it is a massive opportunity for the next generation, I think, is a whole new kind of trade.
Yep. It's huge, and there's a big need for it, and there's a growing need for it. And, I've had grown adults that are deep in a career right now reach out and say, I keep seeing what you're talking about. This looks amazing. Like, how can I get into it? Yeah. How can I get started? What does the future of this look like? And I'd say whether you're, out of high school and you don't know what you're going to do yet, or you're in a career path that you don't enjoy, or you want to try something new, you want to take a change, this is a major opportunity for the reasons that we've talked about, where there's no school pumping out hundreds of options to hire. And so as we see startups. We see services, starting inside of big organizations. They're starting a department. We see people starting their own businesses. I know a lot of companies that are looking to hire.
Yeah.
Laser scanning people, drone people, BIM people, all the above. The resources are pretty slim. And so the only option is to keep, stealing the same people from different companies.
Yeah.
Or if you get in and if you're not in this industry at all yet today, you get started today, in 3 years, you're now one of the experienced people that has great opportunity. I do not know another industry that you could get into today with zero experience, 0 degree, and end up with a high salary and long career,
or even your own business,
either route.
Nice small, entity. I mean, it doesn't even have to be small. It could grow into something significant, but it doesn't have to be go to work for someone else. There are opportunities to create your own path with it. So yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, and that's pretty cool. Like to start to think about that, if we can kind of have that impact on people through the technology and the passion that we have for what we do, where we're actually creating opportunities for others to kind of figure out their own path, and then in turn have an impact in their communities because of what they are able to accomplish that way. Ultimately, that's what I think we're here to do.
Yeah,
try to have an impact on each other. And so, that's exciting.
Really, that's what excites me so much about what we're doing with RCN is like, I started in being out there doing the services, which we still do. I love it. I love the technical. I love solving problems. But when I step back and look at a bigger picture of what I think RCN does for the overall industry and the community, it is bringing the awareness to the fact that these tools even exist. It's creating that technical training and management for organizations who want to adopt it. And it's also creating that awareness to people that don't even know it's an opportunity. And now we can start with actually, and again, we'll see where our platform or our website goes in the future, but we're saying, look, if we can create training material and even get those people who want to get their foot in the door training so that they can now have a foot, to stand on and go get a new opportunity. And now we're helping push, people into companies, and we're helping educate and grow the clients. We're really helping that whole ecosystem be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And if there's something we can do to help support that mission, because that seems like it's more of a mission than it is a job, right? And so that's pretty awesome. Commend you for taking it on.
It's a challenge and it's fun. Looking forward to seeing where all these things lead. But what would you say is really for you personally? What's kind of the passion behind you and your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And
that's an interesting question. My faith is really important to me, and it always wasn't that way. That's something probably in the last 7 or 8 years, interestingly, corresponding with starting a business.
Yeah,
which is I don't know that I would have had the courage to step out and do it without my faith. So I think, that's a big piece of it. And, relationship, we talked, about relationships, and what we can do to serve each other is a big driver.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge too, in the startup environment, the fundraising environment, trying to square that kind of mission orientation that I have, it's inside of me, along with, setting up and having a successful business. I think there's multiple definitions to success, and ultimately, what are you letting drive, those decisions? But my faith is a big piece of it, and what I think we're here to do to serve each other, and ultimately, you don't hear this a lot in business, but we're commanded to love one another. And what does that actually mean when it comes to running a business, and trying to figure that out, and making sure every day I show up and try to do that to the best of my ability.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I resonate with you on a lot of that. And I think that's been the biggest driver for me with business, has been the joy of, creating opportunity for other people, trying to create an environment that, as you grow, you have people who enjoy coming to work every day.
Yeah.
Even when you, like you said, kind of your definitions for success, it's like, what is success to you? And one, I think that's something a lot of people need to redefine for themselves. So many people think that the end goal is just money, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if most people tried to start a business just because of money, they probably will quit a year in.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to compartmentalize that a little bit too,
Yep.
right? We've got customers, and definition of success around a customer-focused approach is different than one with our employees and one with our investors.
Yeah.
Right? And I think about those three buckets, and they're all equally important. And can I put a definition of success around each one of those? That kind of fits in line with the bigger mission and vision, and again, making sure that I'm serving kind of each one of those buckets in the best way possible as the CEO and founder of VTS. So it's not, I don't think there's a one fits all. I think you kind of have to view it, for me, it's in those buckets.
Yep.
And what does that mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate that. Yeah, and another thing I've always loved is the conversation around like work-life balance, for a founder, for someone really trying to push and do something new. You run into a lot of difficulties. There's a lot of challenges you're trying to overcome. Often you find that we work ourselves to the bone.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love alongside the buckets that I kind of, take from someone else as well, is like making sure that as you define what buckets are important to you, is also being all in each bucket.
Yeah.
Like when you're at work, you're like 100% in. You're giving your all to that time and to that thing. And then when you are focused on taking time off of work, you're 100% trying to take time off of work.
Yeah.
Is what I think can make that balance sustainable.
I love that, and I think the other piece of it for me, and it's been a struggle, is your definition of that is different than mine.
Yep.
Right. And I need to understand that. And I got to kind of lower the bar, so to speak, in expectations that I have of you, because you don't have the same definition of work-life balance that I do. And so, we need to, it's kind of meeting you in the middle on that, understanding, what those things are for you. And then, how does that fit into everything? And so I used to always kind of have just one definition and expected everyone to be at that same level or have the same definition as me. And that led to a lot of disappointment, which, was not a good thing. So once I was able to kind of be okay with that, and that takes relationship, right? You got to get to know someone to kind of know where you sit with that. Okay, I know where Matt sits with it. I'm going to respect it. I'm going to feed into it. And I'm going to work around that and try to work his definition to my advantage in the context of that, whether you're a customer, an investor, or an employee. And it seemed to change once I realized that.
Yeah, I definitely can say I struggle with that same thing over the years of like, when you start growing, you have certain expectations in people because of how driven you are or what you expect.
Yep.
And, when you're the person, especially as a founder or someone building something new, you're never going to hire someone that's that same level. You can't have the same expectations. And I think that's a learning I had to go through, is starting, my goal now is when we look at hiring someone, it's that conversation of like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's important to you? Are you wanting to grow in the career and like put the effort in, or is it more you want more time off? Like, what is success to that individual?
Yeah.
And then you define a role and a fit around how they can fit into the organization. Obviously, I think at certain business sizes and corporate levels, things like that are very challenging. But I think that's one of the things I love about small businesses, and that I also see opportunity for, again, in our industry. I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of startups as the need for these things grow. So I think it's also fun to have these conversations too,
Yeah. That's the other thing, my faith, you can either live, tight, closed or open, right? And I think that's something my faith taught me to do. And so learning to let go of that, from that expectation standpoint, it's freeing.
Yeah.
Right. And less stress. And so I think that's a piece of it. And hopefully, we can start to focus on some of those things as we build successful businesses. And those become, just as important factors as number of subscribers or revenue or gross margin, whatever, are the typical kind of drivers or criteria that the outside world views as those definitions around success. We can layer in those other pieces too, and they become equally important as part of the whole mix.
It's another piece, we always keep coming up with new things to do under the RCN, umbrella, from the podcast to the education to the conference. This last year we integrated a separate podcast I had for a while called Apex Mindset, where we interview other business owners, other celebrities, athletes, people, where we kind of want to do the same thing. It's like non-technical, dig into their mindset and learn from them and the business side. And it kind of has pushed me to want to create community and even maybe specifically like leadership retreat or something where, at first I had them separate because I didn't want to dilute the technical. But what I started to realize is there are so many people in our community and in our industry who are wanting to start businesses or who have started businesses, and even if it's not a business owner, someone that's a leader of a department or someone who's in charge of building this technology and innovation within a company, all of those people would fit into this idea of, let's bring together and have these type of conversations. How do we build a culture of innovation? How do we retain talent and encourage employees to come in? How are we pricing these technologies that are new? I think there's a big miss and gap in that as well. And I've noticed over the years watching other industries, I'm like, this is normal. Like real estate has these mastermind groups, right? That leaders from different, investment groups and real estate companies, they all come together to brainstorm and share the good things that are happening and show each other, these ins and outs. And we need that within the construction technology space. Well,
the reality is being a CEO or leader of a company, a founder, it's isolating. It's lonely, right? And a lot of that is self-imposed, but it also is the reality of it. There's not a lot of places where you can go to share, some of the things that are maybe, turning or churning and wrestling with in your brain. It's hard to go to your employees to talk about, challenges with keeping employees or, financial downturns. It's the last thing you want to, share or brainstorm on with those people, or, bring problems home to work with your wife. So it ends up being this really isolating kind of experience where you turn inward. And again, for me, my faith has been that outlet. But, I say this, what you're thinking about, like to have that platform or to be able to share with other, kind of similar leaders in that space and in a safe environment would be a really good thing, because we all go through those same challenges, and sometimes you don't know where to turn to talk through that, because everyone's looking to you like,
Yeah.
What's the answer? And
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, man, I don't know if I know the answer.
Ask? Yeah. Who do I talk about? Yeah.
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 I was hoping you had the answer. So yeah, that would be good.
That's why I think when it comes down to technical, it comes down to learners, it comes down to technician level, owners, all of it. I just keep saying community. Like, I love this idea of what we're building becoming a community, and maybe different levels of community leaderships and down to all of the workers to learn technical, but also to have relationships, to build community, to have people to converse with, ask questions with, consult with, all the above. Super excited to see where it continues to go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
All right. Well, man, we've covered a lot. I appreciate you sharing. Right. Excited to still see where your guys' company and your platform and all of that goes. Excited to have you out to the conference this year.
Yeah, we're excited to be a part of it. Definitely going to be there this year. And like I said, I think I'm gonna scout some fly fish. So if anyone wants to
a little fishing
trip the weekend before, I'm down with that.
There you go.
But yeah, no, it's exciting to, we're at a phase where this is kind of the next chapter. We've kind of dubbed it VTS 2.0. We're excited about the technology and our role in expanding the toolbox, and we'll see where it all goes. And conference will be a big platform for us to hopefully share some things and get some feedback and input, and really get that outsider's view of how to use the technology, and have a strong voice of customer in kind of the next stage of development for us.
Yeah, that's honestly what I love about the conference specifically, is that I've gone to a lot of conferences, and what I think is different about the community that's coming together for ours is we're getting the end owners who have problems. We're getting the service providers who use technology and are trying to solve problems, and we get the manufacturers who are developing the systems all together in one room to, we don't do breakout classes. It's one stage. So everybody is a part of every conversation. When you get those owners coming to share their struggles, and service providers sharing case studies, and manufacturing listening to those conversations, that starts to be like the biggest user group of our industry.
Yeah.
Really giving each other the feedback and the validation and all of those things that we can then take back and start to make decisions off of, and build relationships off of, and product changes and whatever. That's my favorite part of the event.
Yeah, it'll be good. Looking forward to it.
So I've been asking this last question to people, and I kind of enjoy it. If you could go back 20 years and give yourself some advice, and maybe it's some things that you've learned over your career that you'd go back and either tell yourself, and or it might correlate to people who are just getting into career. Like, what's some advice that you'd give?
For me, it's probably trust yourself more. The self-confidence piece of it. I shared that I'd never finished my degree, and that was a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And looking back on it, and the people that were involved in some of the opportunities, there was, I had an amazing mentor at Carl Zeiss, Rob Seamers, who gave me the opportunity. And then, coming to Trimble, people like Brent Fosberg and Michael Ritter, creating opportunities for myself. They saw something that I didn't see in myself. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would tell a younger version of myself. Trust your gut. You're in a place where you got to that point for a lot of really good reasons, and kind of trust and build off of that. I think that took me a long time to figure that out. And again, it kind of comes back to my faith journey and who my identity is in, and where does that reside. I was able to really see that about myself. Is what it took. But yeah, that was. I think maybe I would have taken more risks sooner, if that. But again, I'm where I'm at for what it is. and grateful for that, and we'll go forward from there. But yeah, it would probably be, trust yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's a great one. I mean, it reminds me of a similar thing that when we had Matt Higgins on our Apex episode, he said, never outsource your intuition. Like, it feels similar to what you're saying. Is like, sometimes the decision you should make.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people who get stuck in not taking risks, not taking certain steps because they let the feedback or the environment they're in, and the feedback from others hold them back from taking that step. Now, not saying everyone should go out and just take all the risks, but I think there are a lot of people who, if they have that feeling and they actually do just say, look, I feel like this is what I should do, I'm going to take this risk and take this step, those are going to be the next leaders of the generation.
Paralysis by analysis is very real, right? And so, and again, this isn't for everyone, but the faith component of it, kind of that end game. When I realized that's not mine to decide, it was very, very freeing to stay in the moment and stay focused on the things that I could control, and then make those decisions. So it's kind of right sizing the noise of the outside world. Take it into consideration. But I love that idea of not outsourcing your intuition. It's a great way to describe it.
You take the advice that you can from, if you are somebody who wants to make a big decision, you get all the advice you can from people and you use it as feedback, but then ultimately kind of follow your heart, your gut on decisions you want to make. And I think that'll take you far.
Yeah, it'll serve you well.
Well, thanks again for sharing. I think that was great final feedback for those listening. Look forward to having you guys involved more as we move forward. And thanks again. Look forward to share this out with the community.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time. It was awesome.